Hey, Cypher here. I'm not impressed with Bohemian Rhapsody. It mangles the story just as badly as biopics of the early 2000s, to the point of travesty. Like, the basic characterization of Freddie Mercury is wrong, and it only reinforces a bunch of myths about the man. Heck, there was a movie called Walk Hard that satirizes this exact thing.
Dewey Cox needs to think about his entire life before he plays.
But Hollywood will never learn. Just because there's cool music playing doesn't make it a good movie. There's all the elements of a good story here, but Hollywood has to be willing to tell it. Freddie Mercury's original name was Farouk Balsara. Since he was born in a British protectorate, he was a British citizen. He went to various schools around the former empire and started playing in rock bands at the age of 12. He took on the name Freddie while in India. While doing small band stuff during his college years, he came to know the music scene in several English cities. Through one of those connections, he became the new singer for a band called Smile. With Brian May on the guitar and Roger Taylor on the drums, they renamed the band Queen. Since Freddie couldn't play bass like the last vocalist, they went through 3 bassists before landing on John Deacon. Even though everyone wrote songs, since Freddie was the primary singer, the press treated him like the leader of the band. But Freddie was certainly the most flamboyant member, living the life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll to its fullest. His garish costumes and bombastic performance on stage is what really set the band apart. Their first album was not much of a hit in 1973, but their next album, creatively named Queen 2, finally charted in the UK and saw their first hit single, The 7 Seas of Rye.
I'll take you to the 7 Seas of Rye.
From then on, they were a hit factory, with singles and albums charting in the UK every year from 1974 to Freddie's death in 1991. They jumped the pond to be the front band for Mott the Hoople, and Freddie's performance stole the show just in time for their new single, Killer Queen, which brought that album to gold in the US. In the beginning, they were made to record during off hours at the studio, but their popularity was too much to keep that down, so they got a better contract with John Reid as their manager in 1975. That year was perfect for new management, because they released Bohemian Rhapsody. It was a monster success, even though the studio thought it shouldn't even be released as a single due to its 6-minute runtime. Well, a DJ who was a friend of Freddie's started playing the song anyways, and that is often credited with the song's success. But what made it really popular was the music video. It echoed their second album cover, but with in-camera effects to emphasize the operatic nature of the song. As revealed by Freddie's DJ friend, he began experimenting with his sexuality in the 1970s. Though he was engaged to Mary Austin, even writing the song Love of My Life about her, this was also when he discovered he was into men as well. He would have many female lovers until his death, but men were his primary choice. Mary remained a close friend though, even receiving his estate when he died. Queen cranked out albums year after year. They settled into the routine of recording and touring. Behind the scenes though, Freddie's partying was becoming a problem. They all partied hard, but Freddie was becoming a cocaine addict. It began to spill out when their antics had videos of naked bicyclists and lavish parties that were controversial for their debauchery. After a decade of this, in 1983, the band took a minor break from each other. This was not a breakup, but merely a 6-month respite before hopping right back into it. Paul Prenter, Freddie's personal manager and oft-times lover, was part of the partying problem, and so Freddie dropped him in '84. Queen got themselves into a bit of trouble with the more liberal-leaning music industry when they played in South Africa during apartheid that year.
Actually, I won't mention names. Rod Stewart and Queen and people like that have played there. They're jerks for doing it.
Made worse in perception after having played in Argentina during the Dirty War in 1981. Many thought Queen was supporting fascist and racist regimes. These controversies almost got them disinvited to a huge concert that would make their careers. Live Aid was a charity concert that was held in London and Philadelphia simultaneously, and Queen was only invited at the last minute. Despite that, they stole the show. Journalists and biographers familiar with the band remember this as their best performance. Live Aid is without a doubt what brought them back from the ignominy of far-right political association. Which is kind of funny to think about, because a music video they had released in 1984 showing all of the band in drag was heavily censored in the US for degeneracy. But people were less concerned with a drag show than supporting certain regimes. Either way, Live Aid in 1985 revived Queen for a while. During this time, Freddie started seeing a new lover who would become as close to him as Mary, named Jim Hutton. Though Freddie remained promiscuous, Jim anchored him and brought him away from the outlandish amount of cocaine he'd been taking. At some point after 1985, Freddie was diagnosed with full-blown AIDS. Though there's a possibility he'd known since 1982? That's quite arguable, though. By 1988, he was noticeably gaunt, but denied being infected until the day before his death. In fact, he didn't even tell his bandmates until 1989. Freddie was not publicly out of the closet, despite numerous people pleading with him to become a symbol for gay rights by outing himself. The disease was still closely associated with gay men, so Freddie chose not to be public with his sexuality, and therefore his diagnosis as well. Queen continued to record, though they stopped touring. They even released an album the year of Freddie's death. The whole time, Freddie pushed through the various infections and physical problems AIDS gave him. But it was eventually too much, and he succumbed to the affliction in 1991. Queen remains a band today with its original 2 members. John Deacon quickly left after Freddie's death, but Brian May and Roger Taylor bring in new members and continue to perform. Brian and Roger advised on this film. They appear to have placed a huge amount of tonal control on it rather than anything on plot. Their testimony is the primary influence on the filmmakers. Though they seem to have exercised plenty of control at first, given the original lead actor quit because of them, the final product seems to be somewhat insulting to everyone. I don't really know how this thing got slapped together. There's plenty of memoirs and biographies of the man, let alone all the concert footage. But let's face it, the only reason people like these kinds of movies is because they like the music. The story they're telling, no matter how insulting it is, doesn't matter for the average viewer. They aren't going to care that the musician they like so much is nothing like what is on screen. Moviegoers are mesmerized by the manufacturing of minute musical moments. Can anyone name a music biopic that has any fidelity to its protagonist? Anyone? Please? Well, I do actually have a fondness for a lot of these movies myself, I'll admit it. Just seeing my favorite songs strung together by a plot makes me happy. The fact is, it's the music that matters, not the musicians that made it. But I can't remain ignorant, unfortunately. If you put a modicum of research into any of these films, you'll find something seriously rotten at its core. These movies are trash, but they're fun trash if you don't do any research. Ignorance is bliss, so let's just talk about how good the music is. Who doesn't like Queen? Did I just hear somebody say no?
Loser.
Queen's greatest hits return. Some of them weave in and out of the plot quite well. Okay, so we've got good music.
Big whoop, wanna fight about it?
We do see EMI trying to deny Bohemian Rhapsody's potential, so that's a nice touch. They fictionalize the guy, but that means we see Austin Powers say this.
Well, that's the kind of song teenagers can crank up the volume in their car and bang their heads to. Bohemian Rhapsody will never be that song.
Several months later.
That's cool, and hilariously enough, true to life. Great, so what else? Oh hey, they tell us about Freddie's background and why he has such an overbite. They also show that he was a cat person. That's all true. All right. And nothing. I've got nothing. The whole thing is a dishonest sham and a real insult to Freddie Mercury's legacy. I'm just going to have to lightning round the inaccuracies because we'd be here all day if I explained everything.
How again, Farouk?
It's Freddie now, Papa.
Freddie or Farouk?
Freddie took that name at the age of 8. It was not surprising to his parents as an adult. Mary was a girlfriend of one of the band's members at the time they met. It took some time for Freddie to become interested in her. Freddie already knew the members of Smile. They invited him, not from some chance meeting, but from having known each other's work.
4 additional incisors. More space in my mouth means more range.
He did not have more range. In fact, he had a pretty average range for a tenor. That is not what made him a good singer. Like, come on, movie. At least understand what makes the music great. Freddie was known for his flamboyant style long before meeting Mary.
This is John Deacon, our bass player.
John Deacon was the 4th bassist in Queen. They did not have to sell their van to get a recording made. Queen made demo tapes and shopped them around like every band does. Here's your typical everything was successful montage. But that's simply not true. Their first album was not successful. This movie can't even get the cliches correct. Now they want to make it look like the tour made Bohemian Rhapsody popular, despite alluding to the very real reason. That is so important to music video history, and they're just going to show another touring montage instead? Great.
I think I'm bisexual.
Freddie, you okay?
That quote never gets challenged. It's directly from the biography I read for this, but unlike the film, Freddie had many female lovers after 1976, which is when he came out to Mary. In a sense, he was actually bisexual, if you have to put a label on it. I'm gonna skip the rest of them, but this happens a bunch in the movie. Let it be known, Freddie was with Barbara Valentine into the late 1980s. So this is the movie pushing Freddie into a category to appease his mythmakers. It even forms the emotional climax of the film. He was bisexual, get over it, movie. He did not meet Jim as a waiter. They met at a gay club. The reason they didn't hook up then was because Jim was with someone else at the time, not because of this.
Come and find me when you decide you like yourself.
Yet again, the movie has to shove Freddie Mercury into that tired redemption arc these kinds of movies have to take. Why not attempt to understand the person you're trying to depict?
Are you asking me to break up the band?
I'm just pointing out what awaits you if you go solo.
Nope, that did not happen. Ugh. Here we go.
I've signed a deal with CBS Records.
A solo album.
2, actually.
Do you know what I mean? I need to grow.
You just killed Queen.
I think we've outgrown each other.
The all is lost moment!
The band did not break up. They were only apart for half a year. Freddie was the 3rd member to do a solo project. Him doing a solo was no betrayal. He was simply trying something out while they took a break for half a year. The reason why Queen was a last-minute addition to Live Aid was because of their perceived association with the far right. It was political, not interpersonal.
His lovers were countless, wild, drug-fueled parties where he'd find another lover every night.
This happened in print, and it seems like most people at the time did not actually read it or take it seriously. Believe it or not, the public generally thought Freddie remained straight while he was still alive.
We haven't played together in years.
It's kind of...
Come on, it's only been a few months. While it's possible that Freddie knew he had AIDS, or that he was HIV positive by 1985, that is pure speculation. he definitely knew by the late 80s, and didn't tell his band like this for another 4 years. This film is acting like he knowingly transmitted AIDS with all of his numerous partners, basically painting him as a serial murderer. What the hell, movie? Look, him continuing to seek out new sexual partners after receiving the diagnosis is a problem for his biographers to come to grips with, but you have to also understand how little was understood about the virus at the time. This is sensitive stuff, and painting your protagonist as though he's accidentally killing all of his sexual partners, whether inadvertent or not, is detestable. He actually never outed himself to his family. They probably knew, but never like this. The whole dynamic with Mary Austin is just weird. It's almost like she just leaves Freddie, even though they remained extremely close. Close enough for him to leave her most of his estate. The movie generally just forgets that Freddie was a cocaine addict for a while. No mention of his heavy drug usage is made, which makes it seem like his bandmates are angered by his flamboyance. Perhaps they were simply trying not to tarnish his reputation, but it just gives the movie this tone of, look how misunderstood he was! The guy was a multimillionaire rock star. His most famous song literally has the name Bohemian in the title, as well as the title of this film. Look up the definition of your own title, movie. This isn't hidden. He was socially unconventional, and people clearly were fine with it. That's what you should be emphasizing. How accepted Freddie was despite his bohemian ways. This is basic storytelling. Ugh, I can't take this anymore. Ignorance is bliss. But if you actually care about Freddie Mercury himself, you should be incensed by this film.